Hi, everyone.
Hello, we want to welcome you to Time for a Difference.
To the Difference Makers.
This is a weekly podcast for difference-making people who are inspired to make a difference to the people around them and be a part of a larger voice in a world-changing movement. Today, we're going to look at a painful subject that everyone in life has experienced. This subject contains some of the greatest life scars, some of which have led to a struggle you have today with your self-esteem and self-worth. Because of the pain associated with this subject, there will be a great temptation to look away. After all, who wants to look at their painful events that brought you your life scars?
To that looking away instinct, I would ask that you don't bite on that temptation to reflect on your own emotional scar history. Instead, move your perspective to another powerful healing perspective. See your scars from a Jesus perspective. If you can do that, you'll give God an opportunity to touch your heart with life growth and a healing miracle.
So now let's get past this side effect disclaimer and jump in on the important life issue of embarrassment. Embarrassment is the uncomfortable or foolish feeling we get from some mistake or something we did wrong in front of others. This mistake or wrong thing has given you some unwanted attention and created a belief in you that people have a certain negative label of you.
From a Jesus perspective, let me say this. What you do or become in your life and what you can do and become for God will be directly related to how much embarrassment risk you're willing to take. Now, to find life change from this podcast, you will need to ask yourself this first powerful, honest question. What is the amount of fear of embarrassment am I willing to risk so that I can become the person that I burn to want to be inside? See, your embarrassment risk threshold will determine the boundaries you have in almost every area of your life, from having a good marriage or to becoming successful at some things in your life. The greatest question that I know that you will have with this subject, because we're talking about this risk of embarrassment, what are the assurances or insurances that this perspective you talk about will work? Well, let me help you feel strength. You cannot find a greater safety net in your life than God. And as you will see today from a Jesus perspective, He is invested in turning around your embarrassment situations and the damage that they can cause your life. In other words, if you have a Jesus perspective, then you'll finally become embarrassment fearless. Embarrassment fearless. You probably never heard those two words put together, but why? Why would I use those two words, embarrassment fearless? They only make sense in God's kingdom. A Jesus perspective will show you why you should find your total self-worth from Jesus alone. Once you do that, embarrassment will lose its power to cause you and any fear to not live boldly. So you can take the risks with your heart to become what you're meant to become. To not live anymore from the scars and fears of embarrassment.
So today we're going to study Jesus' powerful heart perspective on embarrassment from John chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and Jesus and his disciples and his mother were there. When the wine ran out in the celebration, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water, which now had become wine, the master of the feast said to the crowd, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This passage is beautiful because Jesus reveals his heart and glory inside a moment of quiet embarrassment. The wine runs out. The bridegroom's entire family is exposed to public shame for not providing enough wine for the marriage celebration. This issue could result in a loss of respect for the bridegroom and his family with his in-laws and the guests. Jesus' perspective here shows us an important truth about how God's grace is always present. Grace to help us with our mistakes and weaknesses, power to break our humiliation or embarrassment.
God's gracious help toward embarrassment then gives us 2 opportunity decisions. The first one, will you invite God to help you in your embarrassing situations? Number 2, do you have faith that God will respond to your embarrassing situations to transform it into something that brings you value instead of shame and scars?
We see Jesus in this story handles embarrassment with compassion, discretion, abundance, and transformation. But where does Jesus' miraculous grace to help us start? The moment we bring our mistakes and weaknesses to Him. Notice Mary asked Jesus for help. That invitation to ask for help will bring what from God? Jesus' compassion, Jesus' discretion, Jesus' abundance, and Jesus' transformational miracles.
One of the most difficult things a difference maker will deal with in helping people is with this issue of embarrassment. You will deal with people who are too embarrassed to wear the "I love Jesus" label publicly. Right? Can you see how Satan's threat of embarrassment can actually control your ability to obey, follow, and wear Jesus with your love? Difference makers. You will also deal with people who are scarred by embarrassment. So now resist making healthy risk choices that will bring them growth and a powerful life. How important is it then that we help people find the Jesus perspective towards embarrassment? A perspective that will help us find whatever help or miracle answer we need to beat the threat of embarrassment. So, what are the Jesus perspectives towards embarrassment?
Number one, Jesus steps into embarrassment. John tells us that Jesus, his mother, and his disciples were invited to a wedding in Cana. That detail matters. God chose Jesus' very first miracle to happen in the middle of community, family, celebration, and relationship. You would think that Jesus' first miracle would be reserved for someone with a desperate life or death case. But God choosing an embarrassing situation for Jesus' first miracle shows you something important about his heart priority to help us with embarrassment. God's heart priority is to always graciously reverse and protect you from the possible life damage that embarrassment could cause you. So do you ask Jesus to step into your embarrassing moments?
Now, from a Jesus perspective, our spiritual life is not separated from the ordinary life. He is present at the table in the celebration and is especially quiet in the crisis, kind of being hidden in the crowd of the celebration. Why is all this happening? To not expose the embarrassing situation. So the question then becomes, do you see Jesus as being present in your embarrassing moments? What do we want Jesus to do? To be that person who wants to give you a turnaround miracle. To be that someone you could put your faith in as you surrender your shame and embarrassment to his love, mercy, healing, and turnaround miracles.
Jesus wants to be that someone you can trust to empower your life for great risks rather than living captive to Satan's use of past embarrassment to threaten you to take the risks you need to make to do what you burn to do. How much do you really believe that Jesus can do with your embarrassing moments? Jesus in this story sees more than a wine shortage. He sees people who need their dignity protected and a grace miracle answer supplied. What is a foundational perspective Jesus has with embarrassment? Number two, Jesus does not humiliate people. Mary says to Jesus, "They have no wine." And Jesus responds, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." As you look at Jesus' answer, we could question whether Jesus cared about the problem at all. He seemed distant and uncaring. But in fact, Jesus is only showing us what he repeated over and over again in Scripture. His life priority was based upon the Father's timing, even though his words to his mother seemed to say, "I can't get involved." Jesus quietly involves himself by giving the servers directions to create the miracle needed.
I believe Jesus' quiet response teaches us a very important lesson in how to help people with embarrassment. Never draw any attention in how you may be involved in helping people in embarrassing circumstances. Sometimes when we want to help people, we just draw the spotlight to the circumstances and embarrass them. We become the embarrassing instrument rather than the actions. And because Jesus and the servers drew no attention to the situation, the embarrassment was averted, and the miracle of the best wine brought honor to the bridegroom. That's the turnaround miracle, the best wine. Notice what Jesus does not do. He does not shame the bridegroom, announce his failure to bring enough wine, or to turn the crisis into a public lesson at someone else's expense. That's not Jesus. From Jesus' perspective, God's grace always provides powerful miracles without being embarrassing. Mary tells the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." That sentence carries a powerful posture of faith. Because basically Jesus said, no, but she has faith. Do whatever he tells you. When we are embarrassed, we often want to hide, explain, defend, or control the outcome. Mary shows us another way. Trusts Jesus' wisdom, timing, and word. Sometimes his timing turns out to be now. And this is one of them.
One of the ugliest lies I see today with many Christians is the idea that God is into humiliating us for our own good or for some lessons with our sins or mistakes. Therefore, many have never leaned in with their faith towards the power of his grace for a turnaround miracle answer. Jesus' grace impact is so powerful that it can grow us to the place that we no longer live to protect our own self-image, but have chosen to live for the image of Christ. Another Jesus perspective on embarrassment, number 3. Jesus' answer to embarrassment rests upon our quiet faith obedience.
Jesus tells the servants to fix 6 30-gallon religious ceremonial stones to fill them with water. Uniquely, these servants obey before they understand what Jesus is about to do. Can you see how quiet faith can help us navigate embarrassing moments? For this point, as we've been looking at Jesus' perspectives, let's reposition our perspective to the servant's perspective. The servants hear that this person that could bring a miracle, he refuses to do it because it's not his time. That's what the servants are hearing. Then they see Jesus quietly order them to fill these large ceremonial religious jars with water and bring it to the master of the feast. Can you see the irony? In essence, Jesus is telling these servants to take a risk of embarrassment, to rescue those who could be embarrassed. Let me say that again. In essence, Jesus is telling these servants, you take the risk of embarrassment by bringing up this water to rescue the one who could be embarrassed. Now, these servants had no idea that any miracle was in the works. As a matter of fact, their actions could have led them to not only embarrass themselves, but the groom's family. Also, to embarrass them even further for profaning God. Because what were they using? They're using these religious ritual jars that carry water for a celebration. Talk about a possible embarrassment tsunami.
That is often how God meets embarrassment. Jesus gives us a word in our spirit that calls for a quiet faith action of risk and obedience. If you act on it, a miracle of grace will happen that changes the whole story. From Jesus' perspective, the empty places can become places of transformation. The very place we might feel exposed to embarrassment will become the place where His grace begins to work quietly, deeply, and generously to change the story. Another Jesus perspective with embarrassment, Jesus turns lack into abundance. Jesus tells the servants to draw out some water and take it to the master of the banquet. Somewhere between obedience and presentation, the water becomes wine. Notice the always heart response of Jesus. Jesus does not make barely enough wine to kind of stem the tide of the embarrassment. He provides abundantly and sends a message, I have more than enough for this moment.
And not only abundant wine, the master of the banquet says the best wine has been saved until now. From Jesus' perspective, he sends us a message. I can turn your embarrassment to honor. Never see the potential of God's kingdom to help you with just the leftovers. God, give me a leftover miracle. Or that will do answer. Give me a little exit sign. Jesus brings a better joy to your life than what the world could ever produce.
This sign shows the character of Jesus. He cares about human need. He protects dignity. He honors celebration and reveals his gracious love is not scarce. These truths about Jesus changes people's lives because it tells us we do not have to be defined by what ran out, what went wrong, or what we are afraid that others will notice about us.
From Jesus' perspective, embarrassment is not the end of your story. It can become a doorway into your heart for deeper trust, renewed joy, and a clear vision of who he is with your weaknesses and mistakes. Jesus can be counted on to enter our lack as an opportunity to reveal his abundance.
So here's the challenge for this week. Where have you run out? Where are you facing embarrassment, exposure, disappointment, or need? Are you willing to bring that embarrassment to Jesus instead of hiding it from him?
Your embarrassing situation invites Jesus for you to trust his timing and his tenderness. You need to also be prepared that Jesus may not move according to your expectations, but he always knows how to handle what is fragile in us. Jesus can protect or restore your dignity and joy and turn a painful moment into a testimony of his abundant grace. This week, I want to challenge you also to read John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11 slowly. Listen, especially closely to Mary's words. This is key when you're approaching an embarrassing situation. She says these words, think of them this week. Do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he tells you. Then name one place where you feel embarrassed, lacking, or exposed. Bring it honestly to Jesus and ask him, what simple act of quiet obedience would you have me do? He's inviting you to take that next risk. Be bold to act with an empty vessel and see what Jesus can fill it with. His love is your answer.
So we want to give you a big thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And I would ask, if you like this podcast, would you please consider joining our community and hit the subscribe tab? You can also find and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X. We would love to hear from you.
If you have a heart to be part of our difference-making podcast and outreach, please consider a donation at our Buy Us a Coffee link below. Keep it up, difference makers. Our world depends on you.